Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
Of Dreams, Clouds, and Mikans by FoxChica19. A collection of cute one-shot exchanges between Luffy and Nami aboard the Thousand Sunny. Huge shout-out to all the warlords of this channel. You know who you are. Want to stand among legends? Join the channel membership and show your support. Adios.
Good night, Luffy. I kissed his cheek before heading upstairs. It was dark out today. There was only a sliver of a moon, and it was orange. As I entered my bedroom, I flicked the lights on. Only the lights didn't come on. Frankie, I called back to the rest of the ship. I'm working on it. His voice was distant. I sighed, closing the door behind me and entering my room. There was a raspy noise, then a faint hissing as a fire, right on the tip of a match, illuminated the corner of the room. A dark silhouette was outlined, though the light hit Robin's face enough to distinguish her from the shadows that loomed and festered in the night. "It's chilly out," she commented as she lit a candle. I agreed. I stifled a yawn, and the guys just wouldn't stop arguing earlier. Below us we could hear their laughter. "Seems like they're fine now." Robin's grin looked creepy in the dark as she turned towards me. The light only hit half of her face, the rest remained in darkness. "Their arguments never last long," I muttered as I went to my closet. Not that I could see what I grabbed, but I recognized the feel of my pajamas, and I did put my clothes away in the same spot. As I changed, I continued, "It almost feels pointless trying to break them up." "It's always about the stupidest things," Robin chuckled. "Why isn't there enough meat? Why can't I sleep longer? Why doesn't no one play with me?" I don't get his eyebrows. "No, Usopp, I'm the captain." "Stop listing Luffy's arguments," I said, walking to my bed. "You're listing Zoro's," she said pointedly. "He instigates, a lot." "Luffy doesn't," I only shrugged. "Well, I'm going to sleep." I bit back another yawn, though ultimately I failed. Good night." As I curled up underneath my covers, I tried my hardest to go to sleep. Just as I was about to finally drift off, a cold breeze swept over the room. I opened my eyes and sat up to a pitch-black bedroom. From what I could tell, the doors and windows were closed. I yawned again, thinking nothing of it as I yearned for sleep. A while later, I could hear heavy breathing. "Luffy?" I murmured. "Can't sleep?" No response. "Just come here," I mumbled against my pillow. "Nothing." "Luffy." I lifted my head, and came face to face with a monster. Its sharp fangs were dripping with blood. Its dark eyes staring at me, watching me, my throat. Its ears listened to my pulse. A scream bubbled up my throat and, "Nami?" Luffy touched my shoulder and I jolted awake. "Are you okay?" I placed a hand to my head, squinting at him in the darkness. Were the lights not working? I looked down at the scary novel I'd been reading up in the library, then back to Luffy. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just a nightmare." "A nightmare?" he questioned. I stifled a yawn. "But it's fine. It was, after all, just a dream." Luffy grinned. "We should probably go sleep in our beds," I murmured, getting up. "Want me to sleep with you?" he asked, following me on my heels as we left the library. "I should be fine," I told him. We went through the kitchen back down to the lawn deck. I kissed Luffy's cheek. "Well, good night, Luffy." With that, I headed up the stairs to my bedroom. Luffy watched me from the lawn deck as I opened my door and tried the light. "Frankie," I called. "I'm working on it." His reply was distant. I paused, feeling an odd sense of déjà vu. There was a raspy noise and a small hiss, and I looked behind me to see Robin lighting a match. On second thought, "Luffy," I called down. He asked, looking up at me. "Come sleep with me tonight." I needed someone to protect me while I slept. He stood there, at the bow of the ship, watching the waves roll across the horizon. They rose and they fell in an endless cycle, though they steadily grew taller. The sky was gray, dark and brewing. A storm was coming, but Luffy didn't move an inch. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't laughing. His eyes held a bit of remorse, a bit of sadness, a bit of guilt. So he stood there, his back unapproachable. "He's been standing there for a long time," Usopp murmured to me. "I know," I responded, stealing another glance at him. He needs you, Robin murmured. He needs a moment alone. He needs a hand to hold, Robin said, as if correcting me. To be silent but supportive. He's gone through so much. Luffy needs someone to be there when he's like this. Luffy needs you, Usopp agreed. With a shaky breath, I nodded, then I approached him. Although I would be beside him no matter what, the fact that he appeared unapproachable scared me. When I stood behind him, he didn't even glance over his shoulder. I looked back to Robin and Usopp, but the two of them had disappeared, leaving the two of us alone. Luffy, I began. He didn't turn, didn't speak, he didn't make a single sound, nor move a single muscle. Cautiously, I reached forward and took his hand in mine. His fingers were cold, freezing even. Finally, he wiped his arm across his face and turned to me. His face was tear-streaked, and although he put on a stupid grin, it was easy to see straight through it. You did your best, I murmured, not knowing what to say. His smile faded a little bit. You saved a lot of people. But I couldn't save them all. I wasn't silent for a moment. Not letting go of his hand, I sat on the step, facing the back of the ship while he looked forward. Do you remember what you told Vivi? I asked. What? He asked after a long pause. In a war, with millions of people fighting, it's impossible for no one to die. I dragged my thumb against the back of his hand. He didn't say anything. I looked up at him, to see tears streaming down his face. I couldn't do anything, for him. For Ace. What's important now is that you never forget him, Luffy, I murmured. He sobbed heavily and I pulled him down into my arms, pressing his face into my neck. Gently, I ran my fingers through his hair, and he continued to shake as each sob rang through him. I closed my eyes. I couldn't shield his pain, but I could shield his tears. Tell me about Belmere, he said, after he calmed down a little. He took my hand in his, slipping his fingers between mine. I gave him a small smile as he looked up at me. Belmere, him? Do you remember the time you spent with her? I'll never forget. She had her eyes shut tightly. So tightly that they were all wrinkly. Her hands were clasping a small clock, the time reading 11:11, and her hair cascaded down, falling away from her as she bent her head to rest it against the face of the clock. What are you doing? I asked. Making a wish, so shush, she hushed me. She, what are you wishing for? I'm not telling, so shush, she told me. You always say that, I pouted. Why are you making a wish now? Because it's the 11th minute of the 11th hour, of the 11th day of the 11th month in the 11th year. This won't happen for another 100 years, Luffy. Does it mean something? I asked, crouching down and looking at the clock. It's special. So it's a mysterious thing, I thought aloud. She glared at me. What are you doing here anyway? To see you, I told her. Her face softened and Frankie sent me. What does Frankie want? He says he just remembered he never changed the time on your clock. Changed the time, Something about saving time. I was hungry so I wasn't listening. Saving the time? Daylight savings? Yeah, that's it. Daylight savings, I shrugged. He said it happened days ago. It's wait, so what time is it really? I don't know, I shrugged again. Do you mean I missed the 11th minute of the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month of the 11th year? I don't know, I tilted my head to look at her. But hey, Nami, it gets darker out later, so we can play for longer. That's right, thank goodness, her shoulders sagged with relief. I still have an entire hour to make the wish. That's good, I told her. We played cards. Go see King. I looked at the clock, surprised to see how much time had gone by. Nami had reset it, but now the time read 11:10. Nami, wake up. The mystery time is coming. She only murmured something in reply. I watched as the time changed to 11:11. Nami, wake up, make a wish. Tired, she murmured. I frowned, but ran the back of my hand against her cheek softly. I sighed, then smiled. Well, whatever your wish is, I'll make sure it comes true. Taking a deep breath, I opened my eyes. Before me, a creek flowed, the water trickling past and disappearing behind the trees on the far end of the clearing. The air was fresh, clean, but not clear, as a light fog weaved in and out of the tall trunks. Above me, through the canopy of dark leaves, sunlight filtered through. My eyes focused on him as he entered the clearing. He paused for only a moment before he walked towards me, his pace steady and slow. His straw hat rested against his shoulder blades, and, as a light breeze passed through, it lifted, catching the air. Every time his foot touched the ground, my heart gave a tight squeeze. A small gulp. My mouth seemed dry, yet my palms were the complete opposite, drenched in sweat. I rubbed them on the skirt of my dress, and I hoped it didn't leave a mark on the white material, but I couldn't bring myself to look away from him. And it seemed to be the same for him, for his eyes never wavered. And his steps never faltered, and when he reached the creek, he stood on the opposite side, and he just stood there, watching me watching him. Finally, he stepped into the flowing water, not caring that the shoes he wore would be soaked straight through to the inside, or that the hem of his pants would only absorb the water. He reached me, stood in front of me, and extended his hand down to me, who knelt there in the dirt, the hem of my dress brushing gently against the ground. I let go of the material, letting it fall so that I could take his hand. His fingers wrapped around my fingers, around my heart as he pulled me to my feet. Without a word he lifted me into his arms, carrying me across the creek. His eyes were still locked on mine. He didn't set me down immediately after we reached the other side. He had crossed half the clearing before he stopped and put me on my feet. My hand clenched the arm of his suit. Luffy took my hand in his once again, and led me out of the clearing and towards our future. Our future together. Until death do we part. This one, Luffy wrapped his arms around the trunk of the tree. Zoro, Zoro. Oi, that one can't fit on our ship, Frankie told him, smacking him in the head. I'll cut it up and use it for extra material. No, it's our Christmas tree, Luffy argued. Should I cut it? Zoro stood between me and Robin. Just leave it. They're both being irrational, I muttered. Luffy, come on. There's a cute little tree over here. The townspeople gave us permission to cut one tree. Let's choose wisely, alright? But the Pirate King needs a king-sized tree. Where would we put it? We'd find a place, he promised. Where? In the library. It's more than 5 times the size of the library, Luffy. Let's keep moving. He crossed his arms, pouting. If I don't get to use it, Frankie can't use it either, right? Of course. We're getting 1 tree. Not 2. Fine, Luffy muttered. Oi, idiots, get down from there. Sanji stood at the foot of the tree, staring up through the branches. Usopp and Chopper? Brook asked. He was kneeling in the snow, facing away from us. All the other idiots are accounted for, Sanji mumbled. He called you an idiot, Nami, Luffy told me, reaching to take my hand. He pulled me forward just as Brook stood and turned around, revealing a beard made out of snow. Just as Usopp and Chopper fell from the tree. Ha 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 Brook, I must ask you a question, Usopp said, gathering snow on his upper lip. Didn't you hear Sanji? Brook walked forward, lifting his head with dignity as he walked past his friend. You're an idiot. I'm quite bored of your jokes. It's a good thing you can't hear them, Chopper laughed. My fair furry friend, we need to have a talk. Usopp crouched in front of Chopper. We all have our talents. Yours doesn't involve skull jokes, heck. Brook's talents don't even involve skull jokes. What's that, Usopp? Brook shoved snow into his long-nosed face. I'm afraid I have no ears to hear you with. Skull jokes make you crazy, Chopper, crazy? Usopp sputtered through a face full of snow. Oi, Usopp, it's Christmas, leave the kid alone, Zoro told him. Yo-ho-ho. Christmas indeed. Brook brushed the snow off his suit. Snow, cold air, Christmas lights. Such amazing sights to see but no eyes to see them with, yo-ho-ho. Let's go, I told Luffy, who was holding his sides from laughing. She, he chuckled as he let me lead him away. We passed by a few townspeople, laughing and smiling together couples. The farther we walked looking for the perfect tree, the less people we came across. This one? Luffy asked. That one, I pointed. I don't like that one. Well, I don't like the one you chose. He pouted as we walked, crossing his arms across his chest. I blew air on my cold fingers, not paying attention to where I was walking, and ended up tripping over a branch frozen to the ground. But I managed to bring Luffy down with me, so I was okay. Are you okay? Luffy asked, lifting himself off of me. He placed his hands on either side of my head and looked down at me. Quickly he stole a glance at our surroundings before lowering his face to mine. Heat burst from his lips, warming me from the inside out, reaching places I hadn't even realized were cold. I closed my eyes and melted into that kiss the way the snow was melting beneath us slowly, but surely. When he pulled away, he shot me a crooked grin. "You know what?" I started, staring at him as he plopped into the snow beside me. "What?" he asked, reaching down and taking my hand in his once again. "I like this tree," I said, lifting my other hand to point to the tree I had nearly fallen underneath. She, he chuckled. "Me too." He brought my hand to his lips and kissed the back of my hand. "It can be your Christmas present," Luffy said. "You didn't get me anything, did you?" I couldn't help but smile. It was fine. I didn't expect him to get me anything anyway. Back on the ship I had a batch of cookies that I'd made myself. The sweetness of the icing should cover the burnt taste of the cookie. "I got you the tree." I looked at him, taking a fistful of snow and shoving it into his face. "Merry Christmas, Luffy." Shrieks and hissing filled the air as fireworks went off in the town square. I looked at the big clock that stood in the middle of the Times Square. They were just a little early, thank goodness. I had lost Luffy and the rest of them in the crowd, and believe me when I said I couldn't move an inch without my toes being stepped on. We'd been lucky to arrive at this island. It was known for having the biggest shrine in the New World, which for Luffy meant the biggest celebration and the biggest feast. For me, however, it was payday. I couldn't even count how many wallets I had tucked away in my kimono. Aside from the fact that I was raking in the riches, I couldn't help but feel both bored and anxious. I wanted to visit the temple with Luffy, and while I didn't think he would do it without me, Luffy was excited to reach the temple more than anyone. I sighed, wincing as I took a step. How long had it been since I wore geta? The strap rubbed uncomfortably against my skin, and I was positive there were blisters. Looking around, it was instinct to search for his straw hat, but he had it resting against his back, not on top of his head, and all I could see were the tops of heads. Absent-mindedly, I reached to grab another person's wallet, however the victim sought it just as I pulled away, brushing his fingers against my wrist. "Thief," he murmured, grabbing my wrist, then louder, "Thief." I yanked my hand away, quickly putting distance between him and myself, but he pursued, quickly for a pedestrian. Suddenly someone yanked on my hand, making me stumble to my knees. I hit the ground hard, the kimono keeping me from scraping my knee. Something was placed on my head, and I watched as the man who had chased after me ran by, searching for my red hair amongst the crowd. "Thanks," I looked up at the person who had, in a way, saved me. She, Luffy grinned down at me. "I was looking for you." "I was looking for you," I told him, getting to my feet. "Eh, really?" He didn't look nearly as surprised as he sounded. "Well, that's fine." He took my hand in his, to the temple. "You haven't been yet?" I asked, letting him pull me along. "I was looking for you," he repeated. He held my hand as we made our way to the staircase. "And now I found you, so let's go." Once we made it to the top, we had to wait in line to ring the bells. "Just twice, Luffy," I told him. "But with the ox bell, it's 16, Luffy pouted. "Twice, Luffy," I repeated. "Fine," he grumbled. "And then you clap twice," I told him. 16. "Twice. Fine. And bow once," I finished, sending him a look, "just once." "Fine," he murmured again. "I think we can get our fortune somewhere up here too." I glanced around. "Fortune? Yes, Luffy. It's a little paper that? I know what a fortune is," he grinned, "but I don't need one." "You don't want to know how your future will turn out?" I asked. "I already know what to expect in my future. I'm going to be the Pirate King." I couldn't help but smile. "Maybe I'll get mine though." "You don't need one either," he told me. "Oh, so you know what my future will hold as well?" Luffy nodded. "So tell me, Pirate King Luffy, what does my future involve?" "Me," he said it without hesitation. "Anything bad?" I asked. But I protect you." "I'm sure you do," I smiled. "I do," he exclaimed. "I believe you," I told him. She, of course you do," he grinned, folding his hands behind his head as we waited in line. 10. The New Year's coming, I told Luffy. 9. 8. I reached for his hand. 7. He squeezed my fingers gently. 6. We started chanting along. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. "Happy New Year, eh?" Luffy looked around. The temple bells were rung. "That's it?" I wanted a big kaboom. I pulled at his shirt front, drawing him in for a kiss. An explosion went off below us in the town. "I bet you that's Usopp," I muttered, pulling away. Forgetting about ringing the bell and making a prayer for the new year, I started heading in the direction of the explosion. Behind me, Luffy murmured, "Kaboom! Wake why, wake why." A cold voice laughed monotonously, dumping me out of the sack I'd been carried in. "Screw off," I snapped, placing a hand to my head. They hadn't been the gentlest carrying me here. "You've got bite. I can see why he's so fond of his navigator. He'll come for me. He doesn't even know where you are right now." I glared at the shadowed figure, standing as a silhouette in the doorway, forcing a cold laugh. "You think that matters? He'll come for me, and when he does, there'll be no safe place for you on this planet." "Keep dreaming," he sneered, closing the heavy door and locking it behind him. He spoke through the bars on the door. "We've already made arrangements for everything. Tomorrow, you'll be on a boat, heading straight for the Marines. And then you'll never see him again." "You don't know Luffy." The man only laughed as he strolled away. The only light that came into the room was from the small, barred, window on the door. I was somewhere underground. The ground was stone, cold and damp beneath me. I had no idea where on the island I was, since I'd been carried here in a burlap sack. But none of those details mattered. Luffy would find me. I just had to be patient. I stood up, dusting myself off, and moved to the far corner of the room, waiting. Closing my eyes, I could imagine Luffy bursting through a door somewhere above me. He'd come in, arms flailing, socking every pirate that stood in his way. He'd pick one up by the collar, draw him right up close until they stood there nose to nose, and he would say, in his most threatening voice, "Where is she? Where is my Nakama? Where is Nami?" If and when the pirate responded, he'd be thrown aside as if he were nothing, and just as he left the room, Zoro, Sanji and the others would burst in late to see their captain shine. He would head down to me. Each step he took would be quick, yet meaningful. His aura would radiate that he wasn't someone to mess with. Our crew would be scrambling after him, and Brook would make a lame skull joke. But even that wouldn't crack Luffy's seriousness. There was no doubt that more battles would follow. Most of them would be weak. Maybe one or two would be worth a fight, like that guy that had just left me now. But either Luffy's punch would have more force behind it than usual, or Zoro would take a step up to the fight instead, letting Luffy come find me. Of course, Zoro stepping up would make Sanji do the same. Maybe he'd be in this hall right now. Maybe he was only a few doors away. Maybe he would call out my name, in hopes that I'd be conscious and able to respond. Maybe I'd hear him say it. Say it with all the love he possessed and a hint of worry. Say, "Nami." I flew to the door, gripping the bars tightly. "I'm here, Luffy, I'm here." He skidded to a stop in front of me, his serious eyes searching my face before he broke out into a grin. I couldn't help but smile. "What took you so long?" He and I laid there on the beach, soaking up the sun's brilliant rays. He was lying flat on his back, and I was curled up beside him, resting my head on his shoulder blade. I splayed my hand out over his chest, looking at our contrasting skin tones. He had such an even tan except where there were scars. The scars were lighter, almost white. Some had a pinkish tone to them. As I traced the scar across his chest, I watched his face. His eyes were closed. He sighed contently. His breathing was steady, calming. Most of them were from sharp weapons because clearly bullets and cannonballs couldn't do much damage on his rubbery skin. Even then, for the most part he had healed well, the scars thin, almost non-existent unless you were up close. The most noticeable ones were the huge one on his chest and the scar underneath his eye. "How did this one happen?" I asked, trailing my finger along the outside of the scar, all the way around the X. "Really," he murmured, giving a small kind of smile, still keeping his eyes closed. "What?" I stopped tracing the scar. It happened during hockey training." Luffy opened one eye. She, don't worry, it doesn't hurt anymore." "Did it hurt when it first happened?" I asked, my fingers starting to move once more against his skin. Luffy didn't answer right away. Finally, he said, "It hurt a lot." "Was there a lot of blood?" I asked. "I guess," he shrugged a little. "Did you think of me when it happened?" "No," he answered blatantly. Then frowned. "Well, yes and no." "What did you think about?" I asked, somehow not offended. It wasn't like we had mutual feeling for each other at that point. Ace. He must have hurt so much more than me. And even this pain was nothing compared to losing him. Luffy's face became impassive. With my other hand, I found his hand and gave it a gentle squeeze. That kept me going. "You know, Luffy looked at me. That and meeting up with you guys. I couldn't wait to see you all, Nami. I kept tracing the scar as we fell into silence. Glancing up at his face, I realized that he'd closed his eyes once again. I stopped, reaching up to his face and brushing my fingertips against the mark below his eye. And this? How did this one happen, Luffy? This one? He opened his eyes, his hand coming up and covering mine over the scar. He started laughing. This one is my determination. I'm going to become Pirate King. I know, I told him. When I was little no one believed me, he pouted. So I had to prove it to Shanks. I wasn't afraid of pain. I could become not only a pirate, but the Pirate King. So you stabbed yourself in the eye, I said, my voice dripping of cold realization as I remembered what kind of guy Luffy was. How'd you know? You're an idiot, Luffy, I muttered. He started sulking, but I suppose you're an idiot that'll become Pirate King. Of course, Luffy grinned. As your navigator, I have to make you promise one thing though, okay? I'm sure. I looked into his deep, dark eyes and gave a small smile. Don't collect any more scars. He kissed my forehead, grinning. Nami, no more scars. I rolled up my sleeves, ready to take on the pile of ingredients in front of me. Robin stood beside me, slightly wary. Dinner had come and passed. Luffy was dozing off somewhere on the ship, content with his full stomach. Robin and I had hijacked the kitchen to make chocolate. Valentine's Day was tomorrow. I know you don't want my help, and I'm fine with that, but follow the recipe exactly as it's written, okay, she said. I'll be fine, I told her. This will be easy. She arched an eyebrow as she watched me. I picked up the recipe, reading it through carefully before picking up a few of the ingredients in front of me. I sorted them carefully. I wouldn't let my previous kitchen mishaps keep me from making this Valentine's Day the very best. I wanted Luffy to eat my chocolate and honestly and truly enjoy it. So maybe my cooking wasn't the very best, but I would make damn sure that all my love for him was in it. I thought of him during every step of the process, and Robin stayed silent the entire time. She hummed idly as she looked through the cupboards, wondering out loud what she should do for Zoro. She settled beside me with a few extra ingredients, and started making her own chocolates. I was excited to make the chocolate for Luffy. It just felt right. This batch was going to be perfect. I was sure of it. But I only seemed to set myself up for disappointment, because it wasn't perfect. It was nowhere near perfect. I don't even know what I did wrong, I told Robin, tossing the tray onto the counter roughly. I followed the recipe. I did double-checked every measurement. Just try again, Robin told me, putting her chocolates into the freezer. So I did. Robin's batch came out perfect the first run. My second batch was awful too. I started on my third, and Robin started on obligation chocolates for the rest of the crew. You're not giving any to Luffy, are you? I asked. There was a part of me that feared that her perfect chocolates were going to outshine mine, even in Luffy's eyes. He's the captain. I think he'd be sad if I gave chocolates to everyone but him. You're right, I muttered, sitting down at the table, looking at my chocolates. I tasted one, sticking out my tongue as I set it back down almost immediately. They look fine, Robin said. They taste awful, I murmured, crossing my arms. I'm going to try a few more times. Maybe try a different recipe, she suggested. Maybe, I sighed, and I did. But the chocolate cake didn't turn out either. I was on the verge of tears, but I wouldn't give up. I wanted so desperately to give Luffy the perfect chocolate delight. But everything was turning out so awfully. Sanji came in to check on us. Robin eventually went to bed. I don't know how long I stayed up. All I remember was waking up with dried tears on my cheeks and failure all around me. I clenched my fist, angry at myself. I threw everything into the trash, kicking it for good measure. I wiped furiously at my tears as they fell once more. It was frustrating. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't cook or bake anything. Not knowing what else to do, I grabbed my wallet and headed for the city we were harbored at. It took some searching, but I found a confectionery. I sat on the front step, waiting for them to open. I shivered slightly in the morning breeze, watching as the sun slowly rose above the houses. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath and exhaling slowly. A shadow fell across me. I didn't have to open my eyes to know that it was Luffy, so I didn't. I kept them closed, because I didn't want to see the look on his face. I didn't want to see disappointment. "Nah, am I," he said finally. Sorry, I replied quietly. What for? It was all delicious, he exclaimed. I opened my eyes to look at him, sure that I could see through his lie in an instant. They tasted horrible, Luffy. I ate it so fast I don't even know what it tasted like, he admitted with his silly grin. But they were delicious. You said you didn't know what they tasted like. How can you say they're delicious? I crossed my arms and slid my gaze away from his. Because you made them, he tilted his head to try to catch my eye. Robin told me how hard you were trying. And you made so much. You filled an entire bag full. Sanji dropped it on me. On you? Right on top of my head, she, Luffy chuckled. I would have been angry, but he was giving me food. So it's okay. I wanted the chocolates to be perfect. I felt the tears moistening my eyes. I hated this. I really did. He was such an idiot, he didn't get it. I got you something, he said suddenly, pulling something out of his pocket. This is supposed to be a day where the girls give the guys something, Luffy, I told him, looking at the box wearily. He said. Who said? That's just the way it is, I sighed. He paused for a moment. Oh well. Here you go, Luffy, I repeated, glancing down at it. It was a fairly small. It wasn't very tall, and the width was maybe half the length, which was nearly the length of Luffy's hand. Open it. He looked excited. I looked at him before looking down at the box again. Slowly I lifted the lid. Inside were multiple pencils for drawing maps, convenient, since my last pencil was getting a little too short. All were red, pink and white. Do you like it? He looked so happy. I do, I told him, kissing his cheek. Whether or not it was romantic, it was the thought that. I winced. I felt like such an idiot. What's wrong? Luffy asked, not missing a thing. Nothing, I told him, getting to my feet. I held out my hand and he weaved his fingers through mine as he stood up. In the end, Luffy reminded me of the most important thing again. It really was the thought that counted. All my effort didn't go to waste, even if the chocolate did taste horrible. Next year, you have to make even more chocolate, Luffy said, jumping slightly as he got excited just at the idea. It'll taste horrible, I warned him. She, that's fine. Robin and Sanji looked at the ingredients on the counter, then down at the recipes. The recipe called for baking powder. Sanji pointed to the cake recipe. It looks like she used baking soda. And that there's not sugar, but salt. Should we tell her? I think she'll be happy to hear that it wasn't really her fault, Robin murmured. Laughter floated through the open door as Luffy and Nami boarded once again. Sanji strode to the door, overlooking the two of them on the deck below. Nah, he shrugged. She looks happy enough as it is. Robin smiled as she nodded. A devious grin broke out onto Sanji's face. Besides, this way I can continue to cook and bake for Nami Swan. Luffy. Just after entering the Grand Line, her back looked lonely as she faces the sea, her gaze set on the wide blue water. In her hand was a bright orange Mikan that she tossed lightly, catching it on its way back down. I wonder if she's going to eat it. Maybe she'll give it to me. I give myself a little shake. Focus, Luffy. A deep breath. Okay. Good to go. What's wrong, Nami? I asked as I came up beside her. She tosses the Mikan again. She barely looked at me, just thinking. A small pause. I'm wondering how my village is doing. How Nijiko is doing. I'm sure they're fine, I told her. Yeah, she agreed, nodding happily, but then her face grew lonely again. She grasps. But that's kind of what makes me feel sad, I offered, and she laughed. Sad is a very shallow level of this feeling, she sighed. It's closer to lonely, I guess. But you have me. She laughed again. Seriously, Nami, if you're lonely you can come to me, I told her. Luffy, it's not lonely as in needing company, she sighed, laughing and rolling her eyes. Another toss of the fruit. It's like I worked so hard to protect them, and now they don't need me. You're homesick, I realized. Yeah, she looked surprised that I understood, but she didn't say anything more. But you don't have to be, I told her, frowning, leaning over the railing. What do you mean? Her gaze followed me. I thought she would know that this is your home, and we need you. But that's until we reach the end of the Grand Line. Once you're the Pirate King, will you really need me still? Will you want me around? Of course. What for? I don't know yet, I shrugged. Then my stomach growled. Would she give me that Mikan, or not? Then how do you know? She demanded. Because we're Nakama, I pause, And if you miss your family, we can be that too. She quickly turns her head away. Nami, sorry I got something in my eye. I waited patiently for her to get it out. When she turned back to me, her eyes were red. I hope it got better. Here, she threw the fruit at me. Thanks, I grinned, immediately beginning to eat the Mikan. Usually people peel the Mikan first, she told me. But then you're eating less, I pointed out. No, you know what, never mind. She shook her head as she began to walk away. Thank Nami, I called out again. But she only lifted her hand in reply, not turning back. Nami, present day. I sat up in bed, running a hand over my face. I had woken up an hour ago, but I couldn't get back to sleep. It didn't help that I had been dreaming about Arlong and his crew. In my dream, I dreamt that being here on Thousand Sunny, even going merry, was the dream. What a nightmare. I pinched myself for the 1000th time, making sure I was really awake now. Was Nijiko doing well? And Genzo? Stop it, a voice murmured from beside me. What? I looked down at Luffy, who laid beside me, half under the covers, half exposed to the cool air of our bedroom. Thinking, hurts. Sleep, good, meat, better, he murmured tiredly into the pillow. I rolled my eyes. Nami, best, he finished with a sigh. I cracked a smile, laying back down and stretching his arm around me. Did he remember what he once said to me, before we even left the East Blue? Probably not. His eye had been on my Mikan that day. Luffy stood triumphantly on the arm of the mast, a cape flailing behind him as a wind brushed past us all. His grin was wider, stretching from ear to ear. Every once in a while he would try to wipe the smile off his face, but he was so excited it was near impossible. Idiot, 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 I muttered, covering my eyes with my hands and peeking through the small spaces between my fingers. I turned my face into Robin's shoulder. Robin. Tell me when it's over. Don't worry, Nami-san. Chopper spoke from my other side. I have everything ready in case of an emergency. Why are we letting him do this? I said, exasperated. I turned back to the scene. Luffy, the series of flaming rings made by Frankie, the smallest barrel ever that he was going to attempt to land in. All stretched out between the ship and I cupped my hands around my mouth. Oi, Luffy, get your ass down here. I'll be down as soon as I'm done, he called back, still grinning. Usopp cleared his through from the deck above us. Done da. Attention please. Prepare to be amazed. As this abnormally unnormal fellow flies through 5 flaming rings at speeds that we can only estimate. Then watch as he lands in the bucket of water, seemingly unharmed. He won't be unharmed after this, whether he makes it or not, I said under my breath, clenching my fist. Robin chuckled. Gumu Gomu. His arms stretched as his torso went backwards, preparing himself for his launch. Unable to stand it anymore, I took off my shoe and whipped it at him. Ouch! Luffy exclaimed, jolting me awake. Oi, Nami, what was that for? I sat there, panting as I took in my surroundings. I sat on my lawn chair, the sun blazing high above us. Luffy was perched on the railing outside of the kitchen, rubbing his forehead where the heel of my shoe had left a mark. Everyone else was gone. There was no Robin chuckling beside me, nor Chopper waiting for the great mishap. I leaned back, sighing deeply. Thank God. Yo-ho-ho. Do my eyes deceive me? Nami Sleep throws her shoe. Brook called from above and behind me. Not that I have eyes to see with, so yes, maybe my eyes are deceiving me. Ah, shit, Usopp poked his head out of the men's quarters. That's just what we need. Nami. Luffy was still waiting for an answer. Why'd you hit me? I didn't do anything, I swear. I ran a hand over my face. It's not what you did, Luffy. It's what you almost did in my dream. And what was that? Brook came down from his high seat, intrigued. He was standing on top of the mast, preparing to go through 5 rings of fire to land in a bucket of water, I said wearily. Yo-ho-ho. How amazing. You managed to nail him despite him not being anywhere near the mast, Brook laughed loudly. Rings of fire, eh? Luffy mulled the idea over from his perch. Oi, Fran. I took off my other shoe, nailing him in the back of the head as he turned to go find Frankie. Don't even think about it. AWWWWE, but Nami, Luffy groaned. Why, Luffy, would you want to jump through a ring of fire, when you already jumped through so many rings for Nami? Usopp rolled his eyes. Because rings of fire sound so much more fun, Luffy pouted. I bent down, throwing Brook off balance as I grabbed his shoes and whipped it at the boys. You're right, Usopp exclaimed, ducking. We should do this. Together the two of them ran off, before I could find something else to throw at them. It probably would have been Brook, in all honesty. But he sat chuckling on the ground. What? I glared at him. Nothing, you just struck my funny bone, he grinned up at me. I waited for a skull joke. That's it, he shrugged. I have a funny bone, so I have nothing to add. I roll my eyes. I begin to walk away, in hopes of finding that barrel that he would use to land in. Where are you going, Nami? Brook called after me. To fill a barrel with seawater, I called back. Maybe Luffy would learn his lesson. I doubted it. Or maybe Luffy was right. Jumping through a ring of fire was probably an amazing experience. But I doubted that too. One thing I knew, though, was that next time, I was going to keep my mouth shut. 'Twas the night before Christmas, and there on the ship, messes were being made and cocoa was being sipped. And who else but Luffy would be the center of all destruction? Do you think you can do this? Robin asked Luffy. He nodded slowly. Thanks for showing me again, Robin. We all tend to forget after a year of not rapping. She smiled at him as she backed away. I'm sure she'll like your present. I hope so, he sighed, sitting down with all the materials he needed right in front of him. Wrapping paper. Check. Scissors. Check. Tape. Check. Nami's present. Check. Nami's present this year was a small teddy bear. Its fur was the same orange as the Mikans, and after searching long and hard, Luffy managed to find a small straw hat for the bear to wear. Luffy? Nami spoke from behind the door. Don't come in. Luffy expanded to cover everything, lying on top of it all. I was just checking on you. She pressed her lips together to suppress laughter. Well, go away, he said, wanting to keep her gift a secret. We're exchanging gifts in a while in the kitchen. Come on up when you're ready. He replied, then waited to hear her footsteps retreat. He let out a large sigh of relief, backing off the materials slowly. He looked at everything for a long minute. Then frowned. How did Robin do it again? A moment of silence. Then, she. Oh, yeah. The tree shined brightly in the dark kitchen. Candles were lit instead of using lights, and it was only natural that Brook was singing. Luffy should be done by now. Nami tapped her fingers on the kitchen table. The hot chocolate in front of her was untouched as she couldn't stop wondering about what kept Luffy. Can we open our gifts without him? Usopp sighed loudly. He's taking forever. I'll go check on him. Robin got to her feet. No, I will. Nami stood up. He's wrapping your gift, Robin smiled. I'll check up on him, Nami said firmly. She grabbed her carefully wrapped present in her hands, taking it with her as she headed for the door. Robin eased herself back into her seat, picking up her mug of hot chocolate as she gave a small shrug. Suit yourself. Nami closed the kitchen door behind her as she entered onto the deck. There was no snow on the ground, but the ship was decorated festively. Garland was wrapped around the railings, and lights were hung up from the mast. Tinsel was strewn across the decks, in no real fashion, but the silver glinted in the light of the moon. But Nami saw none of this as she strode to the door of the men's quarters. With a small, quick inhale of cool but not cold air, she knocked on the door. Luffy? Silence. She knocked again. Luffy? Is everything okay? She strained her hearing to hear a muffled sound from within. Taking another breath, she opened the door. Inside, wrapping paper and ribbons were everywhere. And in the middle of the mess was Luffy, a tangle of rubbery limbs, ribbons and tape. Nami pressed her fingers to her lips in an attempt to contain her laughter. To no avail. PFFFFFFFFT. Luffy. Ha. Ha ha. Ha 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 ha. She held her sides as laughter consumed her. Through it all, she slowly made her way over to him. By the time she reached him, her giggles had subsided. She knelt down in front of him, placing her gift aside. Oh, Luffy, what happened? She asked, pulling a misshapen bow from his lips. We were wondering what kept you. You weren't supposed to come in, didn't you hear me? He pouted. Sorry for not understanding you with the bow in your mouth. She rolled her eyes, shoving the bow back between his lips. With a small sigh she began undoing the knots in the ribbon. It was quiet with Luffy being unable to talk. and being together in this silence was oddly comforting to Nami. She couldn't help but smile as their skin met innocently, time and time again as knot after knot became unraveled. When his hands were free, he took the bow out of his mouth, but still he didn't talk, enjoying this time together as much as Nami was. "You weren't supposed to come in," he murmured as Nami worked on the last few knots. I know," she replied quietly. "I was wrapping your present." He pressed his lips together in a mild frustration. At the mention of the word, present, Nami's eyes unintentionally roamed the room, and there, not too far away, lay a teddy bear, half covered in crinkled red paper. "Robin showed me how, but I just couldn't do it, sorry." "It doesn't matter." Nami reached over and picked it up. She brushed it off gently, then smiled at it. "This is cute. I love it." "Wait, there's more." Luffy frowned as he looked around. He shifted through the mess until he found what he was looking for, the straw hat. "Luffy," Nami squealed delightfully. "It's missing the ribbon around the hat, but otherwise it's just like yours. It's perfect." She took the hat from him and placed it on the bear's head, mumbling once more, "Perfect." I'm glad." Luffy fell back onto the ground. "I was so worried that it wouldn't be a good Christmas present." "It's amazing, Luffy, thank you." Nami placed a kiss on his cheek. She, Luffy grinned. He eyed the gift by Nami's side. Nami caught on a moment too late, and Luffy snatched it up before she could. "Is this mine? It smells like cookies. Did you burn them?" Before she could reply, he was already pulling the ribbon off. "Do you believe in fate?" It's such an age-old question, but I can't help the way it falls off my tongue. Luffy looks at me strangely, as we walk along an old dirt path through a dark wood going nowhere fast. The sun's setting somewhere, though I can't see it through the dense foliage. I'm surprised I can even see what's ahead of me. "Fate?" he asks. "That things are destined to turn out the way they do. No matter what means you take to avoid it," I explain. "No, I know what fate is." Luffy gives me a look that reads I'm not an idiot. "So do you believe in it?" I repeat my question. He stops, tilting his head as he thinks. "I don't know if I do." "You either believe in something, or you don't, Luffy." I walk a few more steps and turn back to him. "Do you believe in it?" "I do." I look up at the leaves above us. A dark canopy of green. Luffy's silent for a moment. "So is it fate that Belmere died?" I look at him, and in his eyes I can see he's not asking about Belmere, not really. He's asking about Ace. I don't know how to respond for a few moments. I find myself looking up at the trees again. How do I tell him that I think it was, and that no matter what he did, it probably would have turned out the way it did? Because our strength back then was nothing compared to the strength we possessed now. We had no means of saving the ones we held so dear. It was, quite frankly, and no matter how much I hated to admit it, out of our hands. "I think fate is like the trees," I begin. "The branches go this way and that, crisscrossing over others, weaving under some. But all the branches lead to a trunk. And the trunk always leads to the ground. Nothing changes that, no matter which branch you choose to follow." Is what he says in reply. "You don't think so?" I ask. "It's just that you didn't answer my question." Luffy is also staring up at the trees. "Yeah. I think it might have been fate that Belmere died." I whisper the words, but that doesn't make them any less true. A wind blows over us. "What's my fate?" he asks. "Eventually we all die," I tell him. "Do you think it'll happen before or after I become Pirate King?" "Who's to tell? We face so many dangers each day." "Well, I don't go down without a fight," he says. He reaches up and breaks a branch off. "What are you doing?" I ask. The branch no longer meets the trunk. He holds it at a distance, studying it. "I just changed the branch's fate." "Yeah, I guess you did." I smile at him. I don't tell him that he just made the branch's lifespan end that much sooner. I chuckle to myself for a moment before he starts to walk again, carrying his branch by his side. "What about us?" I ask. "What about us?" He turns back to me. Are we fated to be together?" My lips go dry as I ask. "Do you believe in our fate?" He smiles. "I don't know. It wasn't the answer I was looking for, not really." "You either believe in something or you don't," I repeat myself from earlier. "I don't think I believe in fate," he says slowly, "but I believe in us, Nami." He approaches me slowly, and despite all the time we've spent together, I can't help but find my heart beating quickly. I look away, embarrassed by myself. but he takes my chin in his hand and kisses me. Slowly, deeply. Engraving my lips with his as if they weren't already. And no matter what our fate may be, I'll fight to change it. He rests his forehead against mine. Because I love you. I love you, too. I kiss his cheek and take his hand in mine, and we continue to walk our dark trail. Up ahead, I can see the last rays of the sun as we come to the edge of the forest. Maybe he has a point, but I still believe in fate. After all, he did fall out of the sky when he entered my life. The grass is cool against my back. Sprawled out on the lawn deck, limbs extended, I look up at the night sky. I never realized how comfortable just lying here was. I kind of feel like I'm floating through space, especially with the rising and falling of the ship as gentle waves rock us. I run my hands over the blades of grass, closing my eyes for a moment. This is perfect. I could fall asleep like this. What are you doing? Luffy's voice brings me back to reality. Being a star, I say after a moment. Oh, I hear the rustling of his clothes as he sits down near my head. I open my eyes, tilting my head back so I can see him. He's looking up at the sky. How do you become a star? I was referring to the way I was lying down. I roll onto my stomach, resting my chin on my arms. All spread out. My head, hands and feet were the tips of the star. Is something wrong? No, he says slowly, but he never tears his eyes from the sky. What is it? What's so special about stars? He asks, looking down at me. Considering they're just balls of gas, they're pretty to look at. I glance up at the sky again. I look back down at Luffy. The sun's a star, you know. Nami, I'm not an idiot. He looks at me. The sun is not a star. It is, I smile. You expect me to believe that the sun is just like all those tiny dots in the sky? The sun's the closest star to us, which is why it's so big, I tell him. Oh. He accepts my explanation just like that. We fall to silence. I can hear Usopp and Chopper laughing somewhere on the ship. Rook's loud. Yo ho ho. Whatever they're doing, they're having a good time. What don't you like about stars? I ask after a moment. Someone told me once that when people die, they become a star, he says slowly. When I don't respond, he looks at me. But I don't know what words to say, because I've heard that, too. After a moment he presses on, so. I don't know if they do, Luffy, I shrug. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I don't want Ace to be a star, he looks at the ground. Why not? As a star, he can watch over you from all the way up there. He can shine his light to guide you, he can rest peacefully, floating in the night sky. But I don't know which one he is, Luffy murmurs quietly, glancing up at the sky. You don't have to know, I tell him. I think the point is that even though you don't see him, he's still with you all the time. Not when the sun's up, Luffy frowns. Well, actually. Oh, the sun's a star. Luffy remembers. Maybe Ace is the sun, it is hot. Robin says it's all flames and gas and stuff. If it's flames, it has to be Ace, right? Of course, I smile at him. It'd be nice if it were true. If I die, I wonder which star I'll be. He wonders out loud. I'm sure you'll be the biggest, brightest star in the night sky. I pick up his hand and kiss his knuckles. He lifts his hand away from my lips and gently caresses my face with his fingertips. Maybe I could share the sun with Ace and you. Maybe, I agree. Or you and I could share the moon. The moon's not a star. But the sun's a star. That doesn't mean the moon is. Oh. He lapses into silence, letting out a big sigh. I move so that I can lie down beside him. He wraps his arm around me as he lies with me on the grass of the lawn deck. My limbs aren't spread out. I'm no longer a star floating through space. But that's okay, because I'm pretty happy on Earth right now. I let the sun wash over me, shrouding me in a blanket of heat and light. A small sigh left my lips. Content as I soaked up as much sun as I could after a week on an island cloaked by storm clouds. I loved rain as much as the next girl, but this was the life. A slow finger traced the curve of my shoulder, sending shivers down my spine. I opened a single lid to see Luffy crouching beside me, a grin on his face. I closed it, turning my face towards the sun. Why are you always doing this? He asked, his finger still on my skin. His touch was cooler in comparison to the sun, but not unwelcome. I just like soaking up the sun. I want a tan. You know that. I stretched before settling in once again. I know that you never seem happy afterwards." His touch trailed down to my elbow, where he then pulled away. "What do you mean?" I asked. "You're not happy when you go inside," he said as if he didn't know how else to explain it. "It's probably because she's either burnt or she hasn't gathered an ounce of a tan." Robin spoke from my other side. I could hear a smirk behind her words. "So why do you want a tan so badly?" Luffy asked, his voice slightly further away. He was at my feet, I realized, though I didn't bother checking to see what he was up to. "It's a girl thing," Usopp said from up above. "The girls are strange. Let them do as they wish, Luffy. They're boring. Just look at them, being all strange and boring. Come play, FFY." "It's not strange," I said defensively, opening my eyes and rising up onto my elbows to locate Usopp. He ducked behind the railing of the upper deck, scared of retribution. And I had half a mind to give it to him. In the terms of interest, at the very least. "But it is a girl thing," Robin admitted with a grin. "And it's still boring," Usopp whispered loudly from his defensive stance. "Come on, Luffy. Patience is a great virtue." I settled back into a comfortable position. Luffy sprawled out over my shins, a large sigh coming from his lips. "You children should try it sometime." "Children, huh?" Usopp popped up like a weasel from a hole. "We're men, Nami." "Then don't act like children," I spoke bluntly. "I am willing to bet that you guys couldn't sit still for half an hour out here with Robin and I." "Could so," Usopp said. "You're underestimating us, Nami." "Prove it," I dared. "If you fall asleep, it's the same as losing." "Well, I'm out," Zoro murmured as he walked past on his way to the kitchen. I glanced at Robin, who only smiled. Zoro could very well wait for ice to melt in the dead of winter. He, admittedly, had more patience than I regardless of whether or not he fell asleep. Unless you were Sanji, of course. "So," I instigated. "I'm not betting with you." Usopp raised his nose to the air. "I'll lose what little savings I've accumulated." "Savings?" I raised an eyebrow. "You're hiding money on me, Usopp?" "You know what, practicing patience sounds like a great idea." Usopp laughed. "I'll go practice in the men's quarters." "What about you, Luffy?" I asked, sitting up to poke Luffy. "Care for a bet?" When he didn't respond, Robin sat up and looked at him, out like a light. "Of course. Why should I expect less?" I looked at him, his black hair falling over dark skin. Why was he so capable of tanning when he didn't even try? It frustrated me to no end. "I hate you," I muttered to him, placing my hand against the back of his neck, comparing the two completely different tones in our skin. It's not that I wanted to be that dark. I just wanted a nice glow. A warmth in my skin tone that I didn't get being as pale as I was. With a sigh I leaned back. I didn't even bother pushing Luffy off. After all, with my options being solely pale and crispy red, I didn't have much to worry about with him there. "I hate him," I exclaimed, looking down at my legs. "I finally get an ounce of color, and I have these stupid pale patches on my legs." "You could have pushed him off," Robin pointed out, not bothering to hide her smile. "Besides, you never rolled over. Your backside is pale, too." "This is the most embarrassing tan ever," I muttered. "I'm a complete laughing stock." Well, she didn't deny it. Luffy walked in about then, and I crossed my arms, narrowing my gaze. "You." His shoulders fell as he sighed. "I'm going to go find Usopp." I exchanged a glance with Robin, not having expected that reaction from Luffy, but as he walked away, he muttered something under his breath. I knew she'd get angry afterwards. "She's a traitor, Luffy, and I don't think she should be with us," Zoro muttered under his breath to his captain, glancing behind him at the tall brunette that walked a good distance behind them with their navigator. At this point, he'd rather have Sanji there. But the cook was back at the ship. "We just met her, what has she done to you?" Luffy, in the meanwhile, had looked back to the old lady who was walking beside their two female crew members. "And she looks innocent enough." "Innocent?" She was working alongside that crocodile jerk. Zoro looked at his captain, confused. "She was?" Luffy's eyes widened. "So she was on Alabasta, too? How'd she beat us here? And did she lie? She said she's been living on this island for years?" "What, Luffy? He's talking about me." "Luffy," Robin called from behind. "Your dearest right-hand man doesn't trust me." "You don't trust Robin?" Luffy looked at Zoro, frowning slightly. "Why not?" Zoro sighed. "Never mind. Well, she's a lovely girl. You should get to know her better, the old woman encouraged. So where does this road go? Usopp asked. I don't know why you came. I didn't invite you. The woman turned her nose to the air. I only invited these four. But we're bored, Chopper complained. You can't exclude just the two of us, it isn't fair. So where does this road go? Nami looked smugly at Usopp, knowing she'd get the answer they all wanted to know. To my hut, the lady replied. It's this far from the village? Usopp kicked at the ground as they walked. I feel like we've been walking forever. Well, we have been walking in circles, Nami said. You've noticed, the woman looked surprised. I was hoping to lose Pinocchio and Rudolph. Whether due to their feet hurting or them giving up. Who's Pinocchio? Usopp asked Robin. Rudolph, Chopper pulled a face. Of course. Nami began, ignoring the two idiots. She's our navigator, Luffy cut in, beaming with pride. I see that, she smiled knowingly before stepping off the trail they've been walking and stepping into the light foliage to their right. And you two have a very close relationship? I loathe them all the same, Nami shrugged. What's loathe mean? Luffy asked Zoro. All answers were stopped as they stepped into a round clearing Nami suspected they'd been walking around it the entire time, mere meters from the small hut and its surrounding herb gardens. You weren't kidding when you said it was a hut, Robin offered an easy smile. Well, we're not all liars, Zoro crossed his arms over his chest. Usopp is, Luffy pointed out. I'm not a liar, Usopp said defensively. She, the captain laughed. So why are we here? Nami asked. Other than to feed Luffy's gluttonous stomach with a free meal? You grow a Aconitum napellus? Chopper gasped, leaping back as we walked by some of the plants she had growing in her field. If used properly, it's quite helpful. It's poisonous, Chopper turned to Nami. But like most poisonous plants, if used correctly it can be used to heal, the woman said. She turned the knob and held the door open. Come in. Sorry I don't have that many chairs. I was only expecting 4 guests. Inside the house, amongst bottles filled with colorful liquids and jars of assorted herbs, were many balls of red yarn. Unraveled and strewn across the floor. The string stretched out between objects, hooked on nails in the wall, falling into baskets, onto the kitchen counter. A few strands were held in place by closed cupboards. They laid everywhere, in the corners and under the 5 chairs that sat at the small table in the kitchen portion of the hut. There was 2 doors leading to separate rooms, closed and uninviting. How could you be expecting any guests at all? We just met you today. Robin walked along the wall, looking at the bottles and jars lined along curving shelves. Unless you're a witch. It's not the name most people call me, though perhaps more accurate, the old woman grinned mischievously. I bet they call her a… Nami smacked Usopp before he could finish. A lovely, old woman. Sit, the witch ignored him completely, gesturing for Luffy, Nami, Zoro and Robin to sit. As they went to sit, she stopped them, waving her hands dramatically. No, you sit beside him, and you there. And you 2 away. She waved Usopp and Chopper to the corner of the room, where a stool stood all on its own. They grumbled as they retreated there. Nami and Robin exchanged looks as they sat down on the opposite sides of Zoro. Luffy grinned at Nami, whose chair bumped against his as she made herself comfortable. So you're a witch, Robin verified. The best one on the Grand Line, she smiled, prideful. Though no one would know. I tend to keep to myself. So why invite us over? Nami asked, picking up a red string that laid over the table in front of her. I like playing mind games with the young ones. The woman opened the fridge and began pulling food out. Just when it seemed like she'd emptied the fridge, she continued to pull out more. Usopp's eyes just kept widening. Luffy's grin stretched from ear to ear. Well, you seem to know our captain well. Nami crossed her legs at her ankle. She weaved the string through her fingers, elbows on the table and hands held daintily in front of her as she worked the twine. His stomach is infamous, Robin pointed out. So, the string? Nami asked curiously, pulling at the one she still had in her hands, still wound around her fingers. Red string of fate, she said idly, setting the food on the table. Go on, help yourself. It's still raw, Nami said, frowning as she laid her hands on her lap, out of the way of the cold dishes being placed in front of her. No it's not, the witch said, and suddenly it wasn't. Or maybe it wasn't in the first place. Nami frowned. Wow, Luffy began eating immediately. Nami looked at Zoro and Robin, who both shrugged. Rather than food, I really am more interested in the strain, Nami said, unsure of what the witch had done to the food, though none of their male companions seemed to care. Me, too, Robin nodded. Fine then. The witch stood up, snapping her fingers. The food disappeared instantly faster than Luffy could shove it all down his throat. Hey, Luffy frowned, looking around. He turned his pout on the old woman. I thought you were cool, now you're just mean. You'll get it back, she promised. Now pick up a red string. No, not you too. Ah, come on, Usopp turned his nose to the ceiling, frustrated with the witch. Zoro hesitated before picking up a string, while Luffy grabbed one instantly, hoping it'd bring the food back that much quicker. Nami and Robin were more relaxed, though tedious, about it. Seeming to pick out their strings carefully. If this was what chose their fates, they'd do it with the utmost care. Follow it to the very end, the witch instructed the four. And they did just that. Chopper watched eagerly, and Usopp just sighed. You shouldn't complain, you have Kaya, Nami reminded him. Captain Usopp has many women all over the Grand Line. He puffed up his chest. With another sigh, he deflated. I miss Kaya. It took a moment, but they all reached the end of their ropes at relatively the same time, though Luffy had been going as fast as he could. Anything to get that food back. There's nothing at the end, Nami said, disappointed. She instantly wished she'd picked a different strain. Would the outcome have been the same? Huh, the witch said. She continued, though the glint in her eyes didn't match the tone in her voice. How odd. What does it mean? Nami said, waving the end of the red string. Am I going to end up alone? Who's to say? It's just string. Here, place it on the table, you may resume eating. The four of them tossed their strings into a small pile on the table. Nami turned to Robin. This means I'll die before finding my true love, doesn't it? Well, we have each other, Robin chuckled dismissively. But she, too, was sligem sure you can weasel your way into some guy's heart, Zoro muttered, accepting the ale that the witch offered. Robin took a mug as well, sipping it as she leaned back in her seat, again releasing a small chuckle. But I'm going to die alone. Nami didn't hide how hard that hit her. I mean, I'm not looking for a relationship right now, but I don't want to die before I do start looking. I won't let you die, Nami, Luffy told her through a mouthful of food. She glanced up at him. He swallowed and continued. We need you until we get to the end of the Grand Line. A sigh and a slight roll of the eyes. She leaned forward with her elbows on the table, murmuring, thanks, Luffy. She, you're welcome. Long after they left, the witch picked up the strings untouched since they'd been placed there. But despite the 4 strings being placed individually on the table, now there were only 2. In the center of each, a small knot having appeared from nowhere. The witch smiled. Now that's fate. The door to the library opened and shut quickly, Luffy leaning against the door, panting as he grinned at me. I paused, my pen hovering over my paper, not quite sure of what was going on. Someone, chasing you? I asked, setting my pen aside as he strolled over to me, his eyes jumping between the windows. Usopp, he answered with a small shrug. We're playing hide and seek, he said, nonchalant as he pulled my chair away from the desk. He crouched down, slid into the space under the desk and pulled me back. It wasn't the first time that I was used in this game. Wasn't going to be the last, I was sure. So, how are the maps? Luffy, there are better places to hide, I told him, leaning back in my chair so I could see him clearly. Don't look at me, Nami, he's going to know I'm here. He waved a hand at me, as though telling me to go about my business. Right, I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose before picking up my pen, and the maps are fine. Great, you mean? The maps you make are great, he said, fidgeting under the desk. The temptation to kick him was great, but I managed to keep myself from doing so. He would only laugh, anyway. How would you know? You never use my maps, I pointed out. I just know, he chuckled. Of course, I rolled my eyes. Nami, you have a scar on your leg. He brushed his fingers against the skin of my calf. I almost kicked him out of surprise, but he saw it coming and held my leg still. We're pirates, Luffy. I pulled the chair away from the desk, trying to see this scar for myself. It's bound to happen. But you're always going on about flawless skin. Yeah, well, even perfection gets scuffed up a little, I couldn't say I was overly upset. It was so thin that I hadn't noticed it myself. Besides, with the number of scars you have, it's only natural for me to get one or two. Don't you hate them, the scars? He asked. No, not really, I replied. I glanced up as a shadow passed one of the windows. Ah, Usopp is coming. Luffy hurried to pull my chair back to cover him. I gritted my teeth as my elbow hit the corner of the desk. I loved him, I reminded myself. I wouldn't kill him, not today, anyway. Usopp opened the door, peeking his head into the room. Did Luffy come by? Nope, I lied smoothly, Luffy's body trembling under the desk as he tried to contain his laughter. I dug my heel into his side. I can't trust you, Nami. You're on his side, Usopp puffed up his chest as he strolled into the room. Now have you seen him or not? Excuse me, I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms over my chest. I'm just going to check the bath and be on my way. Usopp went to the ladder in a hurry, climbing up swiftly. Man, you're good, Luffy murmured. I should just toss you to him, I muttered back. Make you lose. Why would you do that? He pouted, because, for me, that would be fun, I told him. What would be fun? Usopp asked as he descended the ladder. Who are you talking to, huh, Nami? Is Luffy around? I told you that he wasn't, I replied, so what would be fun? To not have to deal with you guys running in and out of here so I could get some work done. I tapped my pen against my map. So is he up there? No, a sigh. Usopp looked around the library. Well, there are a lot of good hiding places though. But I'm pretty sure I know all of them. I'll find him. Or else my name isn't Captain Usopp. It isn't Captain Usopp, I reminded him. Let a man dream, Nami. He closed the door behind him, exasperated. Man, I thought he'd never leave. Luffy took a deep breath as he pushed me out of the way a little. He placed his arms on my lap and laid his head there, grinning up at me. Thanks for not tossing me to him. Well, it's only natural that I help you win, I told him, pushing his hair out of his face. Why? Luffy asked. Why? I snorted. You really have to ask. Because you love me? His grin widened. Because Usopp's right. I'm on your side. Because you love me, he repeated. I sighed. Yeah, because I love you. Sorry about your elbow, Nami, he said, lifting my hand and kissing my elbow. Next time, I'll be careful. As if I'll let there be a next time, I shook my head. Of course you will, he chuckled, because you're on my side. Because I love you, I corrected. I love you, too. He propped himself up so he could kiss me properly. Our lips met, just as Usopp burst through the door. I knew it. Nami, you liar. He pointed at the two of us. You always help him. Luffy is it next. Luffy shrugged. I'll count here. Usopp accepted that, turning to shout out the door. Luffy's counting in the library. Luffy's it, he's counting to 100. Our sniper took off running and Luffy and I looked at each other. Need help counting? I asked. He grinned, just like last time? I nodded, a small smile creeping onto my lips. 1, he said, kissing me gently on the lips. A small peck. 2, I continued, letting him kiss me again. 3, you know, Nami. Hide and seek is my favorite game. He laughed, his lips pressing against mine once more. Mine, too. I dropped down onto the bar stool, taking off my heels and wiggling my toes, trying to get some feeling back in my feet. Get back to work, the bartender snarled at me. I have blisters on my feet. I'll sit for a bit if you don't mind, I snapped back. I do mind, he retorted. I pay you to wait tables, and that's what I expect you to do. Rest is for when you're not on the clock. Yeah, I muttered, slipping on my heels and standing up. I masked the wince with a scowl, picking up the tray of drinks on the bar counter and heading towards the customers that had ordered them. I glanced over at Najiko, who was chatting with one of the usual patrons on the other side of the room. I set 2 glasses down in front of 2 customers, moving on quickly. The sooner I was done this shift, the sooner I could go home and kick my feet up. My feet needed their rest more than I thought, and I stumbled, sending the sake and rum spilling out of their mugs. 1 glass even fell and shattered on the floor before I could steady the tray. Shit, I muttered, glancing at the bartender. He just sighed heavily, clean it up. I set the tray down on the nearest table, crouching down to pick up the shards. You'll cut yourself, the customer at one of the tables told me, swooping down to help me. "You'll cut yourself," I replied, not bothering to look at him. "Leave it be. I'll get a cloth." I made sure he was sitting before I left, going behind the counter to the sink to grab a cloth and the broom. I returned to the mess I'd made, torn between wiping up the rum that had spilt from the broken glass, or sweeping up the shards. "Let me help you," the same customer offered again. "This is my job," I said firmly, taking a good look at the man that kept trying to get me in trouble. He had messy black hair, a scar underneath his left eye. He wore a red, loose-fitting long-sleeve shirt and a dusty pair of jeans. He was handsome, to say the least. "Please, stop," Nami, the bartender, warned. I closed my eyes, inhaling deeply. I tucked the cloth in the pocket of my apron, gripping the broom tightly as I began to sweep up the fragments of glass. The man sat down in the closest seat, though not the original table he had sat at. I just wanted to help. "I don't need it," I replied, setting the broom aside as I finished gather the glass in a pile. I knelt down, pulling out the cloth and wiping at the liquid that had spread over the floor while I'd been sweeping. I should have grabbed a mop. "You clearly don't like your job," he said. "How would you know what I like and what I don't like?" I retorted, glancing up at him. "The look in your eyes says it pretty clearly," he grinned. He looked like a child in that instance, carefree and honest. I was silent for a moment as I gave up on the spill and concentrated on picking up all that glass in the cloth. "Well, I don't see why it matters to you. I just don't understand why you would work in a job where you're unhappy," he told me earnestly. "This is a small town, and there's not a lot of good-paying jobs out there. I'm happy with whatever I can get. A girl's got to live, one way or another." "But wouldn't you be happier working somewhere else?" "Like where?" I snorted, standing up and setting the cloth down on the tray, the tinkling of glass as it fell the short distance from the cloth to the dish reaching our ears. "Come work for me," he told me. "Work for you," I said slowly. I re-evaluated him, but he didn't look like he had much money, let alone the intellect it took to run a business. "It'll be fun," he grinned. "I'd rather stick with stability." I picked up the tray and began walking away. "You said you wanted to live, but I'd hardly call this a life," he called after me. "Or, is this the life you want to live?" I stopped dead in my tracks, his words resonating within me, because he was right. This wasn't where I expected to be at my age. After my mother had died, things hadn't been the same for me and my sister, Najiko. We were in the foster care system for a while, but as soon as she turned 18 she started working for the both of us. It was only 2 years until I started working, too. I looked at her now, as she wiped her hands on her own apron, watching the situation play out. She gave me a half-hearted smile. It was like she could read my mind. Whether or not she could, I knew she understood my pain. Because she felt it, too. I couldn't leave her. "I can help you get what you've always wanted," the man told me. My shoulders slumped. How often had hope slapped me in the face? How many times must I learn that if it sounds too good to be true, it usually is? "Stop slacking, Nami. Get serving." The bartender raised his voice at me again. It was like working for a shark, and I hated this. "Come with me," the man encouraged. "I can't," I mumbled, tightening my grip on the tray. Behind me I heard a sigh, then the dropping of change onto the table. Footsteps walked away and the front door opened as he left. I could feel the gaze of the other patrons on me. My stomach churned, and I felt like I was making the biggest mistake of my life. I took a deep breath, torn. This was the only life I knew. Waiting on tables and being yelled at. It wasn't the best, but it was the only place that would hire me at the time, since I'd been so young. In the 5 years I'd been working here, I'd only dreamt of leaving. I'd only dreamt of really living. "Go," my sister's voice met my ear, no louder than a whisper. So quiet and so surprising, I thought I had imagined it. But, louder she said, "No risk, no reward." "Nami, I won't say it again," the bartender spoke strongly. "You won't have to." It took me a moment to realize the words had come from my mouth. I swallowed hard, surprised by the aggressiveness in my voice. I looked down at my shaking hands, unsure, yet somehow so ready to do this. "You won't have to," I repeated, just as assertive as the first time, because I quit. I set the tray on the counter, taking off my apron and slamming it down beside it. The motion stung my hand, but I didn't let it show. I squared my shoulders, looking the bartender in the eye. "I won't hire you back," he told me. I looked between him and Najiko. Thanks. The bartender offered a small smile. Take care of my sister, I told him. I turned to her, and don't let this guy bully you. We both know that I'm the one that bullies him. She gave me a warm hug. I can handle my husband, Nami. But he's been right for the past 2 years. This place is holding you back. Go try something new. Make mistakes. Take risks. But make sure you come back to visit. Thank you, I whispered in her ear, hugging her tightly. Now go on, she pushed me gently towards the door. I didn't need a second nudge. I rushed out the door, after the man, only to turn the corner to see him standing there. His face brightened instantly when he saw me, straightening up. She, he chuckled as I reached him. I knew you'd come. Well, I'm here, I crossed my arms in front of me. But I stand by what I said. Stability means a lot to me. What exactly is it that you do? What do you want to do? He asked. A good question. Well, all I've known is this town. So there's a big part of me that hopes whatever you do involves traveling. I'm sure we can work something out. I've always wanted to travel, too. So what do you do? I asked. We haven't decided yet, he shrugged. I repeated. Haven't decided yet? My buddy Zoro and I decided just the other day we'd start a business together. We figured we should gather a few people before we jumped into anything. So basically you're both unemployed. Was it too late to go back and work at the bar? Traveling, He rubbed his chin, thinking. I think we have enough money for a boat. We could, I don't know, become fishermen or something. You told me you could make my dreams come true, that if I came with you I'd live life and have fun. But I'd almost be better off stealing from people on the streets. Stealing, his eyes brightened up. Oh, we could become pirates. Are you even listening to me? I asked, exasperated. Of course, he grinned. But you need to start living in the moment. Living in the moment, huh? The man began walking away. My feet moved on their own as I followed him. Hey, what's your name, anyway? I asked. Luffy, he smiled. And you're Nami, right? Do you trust me, Nami? Not really. I guess I have to, because I don't want to go back. She. Well, that's fine. But I trust you. And I promise that between the three of us, we'll make even more friends. And we'll have so many adventures, it'll be fun. Fun it wouldn't pay the bills, or put food in our stomachs. He had nothing of real substance to offer me. But that wouldn't stop me from taking this leap of faith. So, who's Big Spoon? Frankie asked Luffy and I one day as we sat on the deck. Suki and I were laying in the sun, while Robin sat in the shade reading. Luffy was stealing long drinks when I wasn't looking from the glass Sanji had brought me earlier, but I was used to that. And he wasn't as stealthy as he believed. From the sound he made with the straw to the way he smacked his lips after with satisfaction, it was all too easy to tell. But I let him get away with it anyway. We're not using spoons right now, Luffy said innocently. I'm not talking about eating, Frankie laughed. Oh, what else can you use a spoon for? It was my turn to laugh. I mean when you cuddle. There was something funny about a cyborg like Frankie saying the word, cuddle. Who holds who? Why does it matter? I asked. I was just wondering, he shrugged. Curiosity killed the cat. I looked at him over top of the rims of my sunglasses. Again? Who's this curiosity guy that keeps killing cats? Luffy asked. It's an idiom, I told him. He does sound like an idiot, Luffy agreed. I opened my mouth to reply, but shook my head instead. I'd sort through that later, I guess. If I had to guess, I'd say Luffy's Big Spoon, Usopp said, leaning on the railing outside the kitchen beside Chopper. He's the man, after all. That's what I was thinking, Frankie nodded his head, rubbing his chin with one hand. Brooks the Big Spoon, Suki cut in from her seat on the lawn deck. He's also a lot taller than you, Usopp pointed out. So if height has to do with it, then Robin's the Big Spoon, Chopper laughed. Zoro loves being held, Robin chuckled. I couldn't tell if she was joking or not. Usually I would look to Zoro to see if his ears were red, but he was up in the crow's nest. Luffy's taller than Nami, so again, it must be he who is the Big Spoon, Usopp grinned. I don't see why it matters, I told all of them. Right, Luffy? It affects the whole dynamic of a relationship, Frankie said. Big Spoon is clearly in control of the relationship. Then it has to be Nami, Usopp frowned. Right? Because Nami controls everything. I don't agree with that, Suki said. Brooke and I mutually respect and rely on each other. With some exceptions, Frankie added quickly. Now you're just spitting out words. I got to my feet. Where are you going? Luffy asked, following me. I need to water my Mikans, I told him. Want one? He didn't hesitate. So is Nami or Luffy Big Spoon? Usopp asked. I guess you'll never know, Suki grinned. The suspense will kill me, Usopp said dramatically as Brooke exited the kitchen. Then we'll finally have some peace and quiet, Brooke chuckled. Not that I have ears to hear it with, yo-ho-ho, skull joke. Shish, Usopp whispered to Chopper and Frankie as they crept up to the woman's quarters. Robin and Zoro were in the crow's nest like usual, and Suki and Brooke usually played music in the library before settling down in the men's quarters to sleep. Usopp pressed his ear to the door, listening carefully. He gave a small thumbs up before slowly inching the door open. The three of them crept across the room and peered down at the two of them. Instead of spooning, they faced each other, folded into a childlike embrace. Nami's head rested under Luffy's chin, and her hands clutched at the front of his shirt. His arms wrapped around her, holding her close. So, no big spoon? Usopp whispered. Or is Luffy technically? Chopper looked at Frankie. If you guys don't leave right now, and let us sleep, I swear I will beat you until the sun rises tomorrow. Nami's voice rose up from the bed. Luffy just laughed sleepily. The three of them scrambled out of the quarters quickly, leaving Nami and Luffy on their own. Night, Nami, Luffy rubbed his chin over the top of her head. She sighed, content. Night, Luffy. What are you smiling about? Usopp asked, leaning on the kitchen table. We were all sated after a large meal made by Sanji. Nothing, I sighed with content, looking at Luffy who sat directly opposite of me. He was smiling, too, as he leaned back with satisfaction. Usually, I sat right beside him, but my maps had kept me away from the first part of dinner and Usopp had made the decision to keep me away from him for a meal. So it was Luffy on one side of the table, and me all the way on the other side. I thought you'd be angry that you didn't get to sit beside him. Women are like that, right? Usopp covered his head as if I was going to smack him. I slipped my shoe off, ready to throw it, but Suki beat me to it. Are you guys playing footsies under the table? Brooke asked, glancing under the table. Not at all, I told him, still smiling. It felt like I couldn't stop. Not that I was complaining. Maybe they have an inside joke, Chopper murmured to Frankie. Nami doesn't like jokes, Usopp reminded him. I like jokes, I said defensively, still smiling. What I don't like are pranks. There's a difference. I'm thinking they've reached the ultimate level of lovey-dovey, so sick I think I'm going to throw up. Did you need some medicine? Chopper offered. What? No, I'm talking about their couple-ish romantic-ness, Usopp said in mock horror. I think they've reached couples telepathy. Everyone just laughed. But that wasn't it, either. Though, sometimes it did feel like he read my mind. Brooke hadn't seen it when he glanced underneath, but Luffy's arm stretched beneath the table, his hand intertwining with mine. His thumb brushed against the back of my hand. And, yes, that did make me smile like an idiot. But to me, it just meant that nothing could keep us apart. He would always conquer the distance between us. Ready, Luffy? I grinned, excited to show him the evening I had planned out. Ready, he replied eagerly. I pulled apart the foliage to reveal a secluded meadow, off the beaten trail. It was the perfect place to catch fireflies and enjoy a meal with Luffy without being bugged by any of the others. I thought this was just going to be me and you? Luffy asked. It is, I gave him a confused look. Then why are you showing me Zoro and Robin? He lifted a finger to point. I turned my head to look, following the line of his finger to where the two of them sat on my blanket, eating the food that I had made Sanji make for this evening. What are they doing here? I let go of the branch, peeking through the leaves instead of out in the open. Why are they eating our food? Food? They're eating it? Luffy pouted slightly. I'm sorry, Luffy. I don't know how they found this place, I sigh. I guess we'll have to find something else to do tonight. Like catch those glowing bugs? He asked, pointing away from the meadow, into the forest. That's why you brought the jars, right? It is, I said slowly, but we were supposed to catch them in the meadow before we ate. Well, the meadow's taken, so let's chase them through the forest. He took one of the jars, grinning a little. The person who catches the most wins. If you have to ask, you're not the man I thought you were, I teased. Ready, he said slowly. Set. Go. I giggled as I took off, away from the meadow and the plans that I'd made and set out so carefully. Eaten by the two people I expected least. At least Luffy was spontaneous. He was never out of sight, even if there were trees in between us. I snuck up on bushes, watching the small bugs light up and fade out of sight. When I had them clear in my vision, I quickly slipped the jar and lid around them, trapping them within. They glowed within the glass, and as I admired the ones I'd caught, Luffy snuck up behind me, tickling my side with a gentle touch. I clenched the jar to my chest, turning on him and watching as he ducked away, going further on ahead. I followed him, hoping for a chance to get him back, and knowing that the only one I was going to get was the one that he laid out for me purposefully. "Whoa," I heard him say. I crept up behind the leaves, ready to jump on him. He let it happen, grinning as he nodded at the view in front of us. "Look, Nami." "Ruins," I said, sliding off his back and back onto the ground. The old architecture rose in front of us, majestic and mysterious. Brilliant carvings were etched into the walls, moss and vines clung to cracked and crumbled stone. A fallen society, taken back by nature. It was beautiful. I clutched at the jar, taking a step forward. I spun back to him. "This is amazing. Robin and Zoro should have come here instead. Robin would have loved this." Luffy agreed. "Too bad they found our meadow instead." "Do you think nah?" I shook my head, not letting the thought be fully articulated. "What?" Luffy asked, but I shook my head. He shrugged it off and looked out over the ruins. After a moment he laughed loudly, she. It was my turn to ask, "What? How funny would it be if Zoro was trying to lead Robin here? But he got lost and ended up at the meadow." He chuckled. "You guys always say he doesn't have any sense when it comes to finding his way." I smiled. That's the exact thought that crossed my mind. "We should let the fireflies go." I changed the subject, walking forward and sitting on a ledge of a half-wall that looked sturdy enough. I held the jar in my lap as I waited for Luffy to join me. "How many did you catch?" he asked, bringing one foot up to rest on the wall, while the other dangled beside mine. I lifted the jar to eye height, counting them carefully. 9, no, 10. "You? That many? Wow," he said, passing me his own jar. I gave him mine to hold. Inside, there were only 2. 2, Luffy? It's like you didn't even try. I laughed, exchanging our jars again. I opened my jar, letting the fireflies go. They glowed and faded as they flew out. I watched them as they disappeared into the night. "I think I scared them all away," he chuckled, looking at his own jar, holding it in one hand. The other hand laid between the two of us, supporting him as he leaned back slightly. "Besides, 2's just enough, isn't it?" I set the empty jar beside me on top of the wall, letting my hand settle on top of his. He set his jar aside, too, the lightning bugs still inside, dancing around each other. "You win," I sighed, leaning my head on his shoulder. His hand wrapped around mine. But you caught more." "But, you're right. Because 2 is perfect." I looked up at him. He smiled at me, and I let my gaze drift back to the ruins in front of us. "So, do you think there's any treasure in there?" "Nami Swan, want to see something funny?" Sanji asked me, setting a small plate of treats in front of me as I sat at the kitchen table. I picked one up, hoping to satisfy the growling of my stomach. Apparently, I didn't eat enough at breakfast. Maybe my own words were coming back around to bite me in the ass. There was once a time I had told Robin, "The longer you hang out with your loved ones, the more you become like them." Maybe I was becoming a glutton like Luffy. Maybe I would just start eating and eating until I became round like a balloon. "Nah. What is it?" I asked Sanji as he retreated back to his counter. He returned with a fruit in his hands. "Do you know what this is?" "A citrus fruit?" It wasn't too hard to guess. This is the sourest fruit in all of the Grand Line. Oddly, it prospers in cold climates. Which is why this last island had some. I plan on giving it to Luffy. "You can try, but it's not going to work," I shrugged. It was a good idea. But anything Sanji offered him was inhaled, not eaten. The man downs those kinds of things without even chewing. "You're probably right," he sighed. "Are you going to incorporate that into a dish?" I asked. "Well, add a bit of salt, and sour turns sweet. So I could," he replied. "I got a few of them. Did you want one?" "You know what? Yeah." I held up my hands and he tossed one to me. Maybe I could make him eat it. Thanks, I'll have it later. I really do recommend the salt, he warned me. I'll keep that in mind, I nodded, tucking it into my sweater pocket. Of course you're here, Luffy said, finding me as I groomed my Mikan trees. Frankie had set up the greenhouse again. It was warm in here as opposed to the decks below, which were lined in a coat of white snow. Need something? I asked, stopping to peel a Mikan. I split it apart, putting a small piece in my mouth. I passed Luffy the rest of the Mikan, and he took it graciously. Just your company. And some warmth. Brr, it's cold downstairs, he leaned against the glass of the greenhouse. I know. I can't wait to get back to the warm islands, I muttered, picking more Mikans off and setting them down in the basket by my feet. Nami, what's this? Luffy asked. I looked over at him, to see him holding the fruit that Sanji had given me earlier. That's a sour fruit. So why's it been picked? Luffy asked, referring to the Mikans when they weren't quite ready yet. This one is supposed to be sour, Luffy. I placed another fruit in the basket, then crossed over to him, crouching down and taking it from him. Did you want to try it with me? He said, crossing his legs and waiting patiently as I peeled it. The skin was tougher than my Mikans, so the process took a little longer, but he hummed as he waited, letting the time pass idly and without a care. Let this rest on your tongue a moment before swallowing it, okay? I took 2 pieces, placing one in his hand. We'll do this at the same time, alright? Okay, he said, sniffing it quickly before he looked at me with anticipation. On 3, I said, mentally preparing myself. I didn't think that Luffy had any idea what he was in for. 1, 2, 3. He placed it in his mouth, but I chickened out at the last moment. He cringed, wincing and shaking his head. His eyes even watered up a little. That's how sour it was. I almost felt bad as he squirmed. He swallowed though, before stretching his hand out and grabbing a Mikan, hoping to offset the sour with the sweet. Why didn't you eat it? He asked, eating the Mikan greedily. I couldn't, I'm sorry, I laughed. How bad was it? Nami, he crossed his arms. You have to eat it, now, to be fair. After seeing your reaction, I'm not sure if I want to, I admitted. Fine, then let me eat it all, he said, reaching to take the fruit. Sour or not, I shouldn't have been surprised that he wanted more. No, I should do this. I took a deep breath, then placed the piece in my mouth. Little did Luffy know, I had switched out the sour fruit for a piece of Mikan. His eyes widened as he watched me swallow it without any outrageous reactions. I frowned down at the fruit in my hand. Sanji lied. This isn't sour at all. Luffy leaned in, and for a moment I thought he was going to kiss me, but he pulled back before our lips met. Nami, you ate the Mikan. Not the sour one. I can smell it. Damn it. Okay, I'll eat it for real this time, I promised. I'm not so sure I can trust you. We'll eat it together. He took the fruit from me. On the count of 3 again, I asked. No, Nami. Together, he stressed the word. He took another piece and after only a slight moment's hesitation, shoved it in his mouth and pressed his lips to mine. We both cringed at the same time, knocking our foreheads together. Luffy fell away, laughing. Maybe we should stick to Mikans, I said, rubbing my forehead and shaking my head as if that would get the taste out of my mouth any quicker. They're a little sweeter, aren't they? He agreed. Want to share a sweet kiss then? I asked, reaching for the basket. But he stopped me, pulling me back to his side. Sweet or sour, Nami, I just wanted a kiss. I hummed as I got dressed, still enjoying the steam that came from the bath and hid me in waves of moist, warm air. I loved the library below, but the bath was probably my favorite place on the ship. Soaking in bubbles, letting the water wash away all worries. Content, I towel-dried my hair, reminding myself that I should do my laundry later. Maybe I could get Robin to do mine with hers. When was the last time Luffy had his clothes washed? When was the last time Luffy took a bath? Feeling better than I had an hour ago, I went down the ladder to the observatory room. Luffy sat in my seat at my desk. His neck stretched out as he looked through the window upside down. When he heard me, his neck snapped back into place and he grinned at me. Nami, you took forever, he greeted me. Going to go take your own bath, Luffy? I asked, walking over to the desk. I fell in the ocean yesterday, he said, as if that was a valid excuse. I let out a deep breath. Luffy, we've gone over this. Falling into the water doesn't count as a bath. Zoro counts it as a bath, he defended. And I'm sure Robin will tell him otherwise, too, I said, opening one of the desk drawers and finding the hair clip I'd left there the other day. I pinned my damp hair up, patting Luffy's shoulder as I walked away. Maybe Sanji would have a fruit salad made for me already. Go take a bath, Luffy. But, Nami, he complained. I bet Robin's sending Zoro this way soon, too, I told him. And if not, I'm sure I could get her to admit that Zoro smelled strongly of stale sweat and that he could, indeed, use a bath, too. He groaned. It doesn't have to be a long bath, I pointed out. Fine, he grumbled. But you have to spend at least 10 minutes in the water. Okay? Make sure to scrub behind your ears, I said. Nami, he sighed dramatically as he headed towards the ladder. Just taking care of you, I smiled. Besides, it feels so nice to be clean. Oh Sanji's voice rang out across the ship. Luffy. My afternoon snack, Luffy said quietly, glancing in the direction of the kitchen. I watched him as he glanced between the kitchen, the ladder and me. Can I take it later? He asked finally as his stomach growled loudly. I'm too hungry to take a bath right now. It's up to you. Luffy, I waved my hand towards the kitchen. Who was I to stand in front of an already prepared meal? I'd have to tell Sanji to withhold the next meal until he takes a bath. He's have a really late dinner the longer he procrastinated. Like, tomorrow? He asked. A really late dinner.